And what if I told you that the so-called gods of the guitar are actually just con artists hiding behind expensive machines and good marketing? You have been trained to think these guys are geniuses, but if you look at the facts, they're really just boring old men playing one note every 10 minutes. We're talking about guys who trade actual skill for funny faces, delay pedals, and leather pants that should have been retired in 1975. They convinced the world that playing slow is soulful when really it's just lazy. Here's how these guitar heroes turned rock and roll into a nap. Let's start with the guy who built an entire career on a single setting on a guitar pedal. His name is Dave Evans, but he calls himself The Edge. And that sounds cool. It sounds dangerous. It implies he's living on the brink of disaster. But if you actually listen to what he is doing, he's living on the brink of totally falling asleep. In the early 1980s, U2 became the biggest band on the planet. They had the flags, they had the mullet on Bono, they had the politics, and they had a guitar sound that filled entire stadiums. People heard songs like Where the Streets Have No Name and thought they were hearing an orchestra of guitars. They thought this guy must be playing 1,000,000 notes a minute to get that sound, but he wasn't. He was playing 2 notes. The Edge is not a guitar player, he is an IT guy with a strap. And here's the secret to the U2 sound. It is called a dotted 8th note delay. You play 1 note, and the machine repeats it back to you 3 times in a specific rhythm. Check the credits on the Joshua Tree. The real lead guitarist on that album is a Korg SDD 3000 rack unit. The Edge hits a string and he waits. The machine goes digga 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 digga. He hits another string. The machine goes digga digga digga. He takes all the credit. The machine does all the work. If he took away his electricity, he would sound like a beginner trying to tune a banjo. So in 1987, U2 is touring the world. They're selling out Wembley. They're on the cover of Time magazine. And the critics are calling The Edge a minimalist genius. Minimalism is a great word. It's a fancy way of saying you don't know how to solo. So while Eddie Van Halen was actually melting faces with actual technique, The Edge is standing there wearing a beanie hat looking at his shoes. He stares at the floor because that apparently is where the talent is. It's in the pedal board. He has to tap dance on 20 different buttons just to get through a verse. It's not rock and roll, it's data processing. And the ego on this guy is massive. He acts like he invented sound. In the documentary, It Might Get Loud, you see Jimmy Page playing Whole Lotta Love, and it sounds pretty dangerous. You see Jack White fighting with his guitar, and often losing. And then you see The Edge explaining his rack equipment like he's giving a PowerPoint presentation at a dental conference. He talks about shimmer and modulation. Uses big words to hide the fact that he is afraid of scales. U2 stopped being a rock band a long time ago, and then they became a full-blown corporation. And The Edge is the CTO. He found a way to make being average sound huge. He turned on the echo, turned off the distortion, and cashed the checks. And then you have David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. Now this guy is treated like a religious figure. People talk about his tone like it heals the sick. They say 1 note from David Gilmour is worth 1,000 notes from anybody else. And that is a convenience for playing as slow as humanly possible. As a matter of fact, if he played any slower, he would actually be going backwards in time. And Pink Floyd in the 70s was huge. But by the mid-80s, the band was a war zone. Roger Waters, the really angry guy who wrote all the lyrics, quit the band in 85. He thought Pink Floyd would be dead without him. And so he did what any rock star normally would do. He sued them to stop them from using the name, but David Gilmour, he had a plan. He didn't need Roger's lyrics. He didn't need the anger. He just needed the lasers. So in 1987, Gilmour releases A Momentary Lapse of Reason under the Pink Floyd name, and it was a massive hit. But when you listen to it, it sounds like music for a planetarium gift shop. It is safe, very polished, and incredibly slow. Gilmour's style is simple. He bends a string up, and he holds it there for 5 seconds, puts a lot of reverb on it. He makes a face like he's smelling something really good, and the crowd goes wild. Why? Because they're stoned. Pink Floyd music is designed for people who cannot move off the couch. It's the soundtrack for staring at a lava lamp. In 1994, they released the Division Bell. They went on a massive tour. They had a giant disco ball that opened up like a flower. They even had pigs flying on wires. They had a circular screen playing cartoons. And they needed all of that stuff because the band on stage was basically asleep. David Gilmour stands in one spot for 3 hours, wears a t-shirt and jeans. Looks like your dad grilling hamburgers on a Sunday. There's no danger, no sweat. He just stands there and lets that guitar sustain for days. The solo in Comfortably Numb is famous. People call it the greatest solo ever. It's certainly one of the longest. He just goes on and on. He plays a phrase, stops, plays it again, stops. It's like a conversation with somebody who keeps forgetting what they're saying. And the fans, they eat it up. They think it's deep. They think the space between the notes is so profound. It's not what you play, it's what you don't play. We've heard that refrain many times. So does that mean that then you just stand on the stage and hold the guitar and stare at the audience, and then you are a god? Let me know in the comment section if that is the case, because maybe I've been doing it wrong all these years. But it isn't profound, it's empty. Gilmour turned Pink Floyd into a light show with a backing track. He proved that you don't need to be exciting if you have enough dry ice and lasers. He took the psychedelic revolution and turned it into elevator music for rich baby boomer. Wake up, Grandpa. The song started 10 minutes ago. And now let's talk about Carlos Santana. This guy has been playing the exact same solo since 1969. He played at Woodstock and it was great. He was on acid. The guitar neck looked like a snake. He played with fire and passion. But then he decided that he was a spiritual guru. He started wearing all white, started talking about angels and vibrations, and then the music became like drilling teeth. Santana has a very specific sound. It's high-pitched, cuts right through those eardrums, and he holds those notes until they scream for mercy. He calls it sustain, and he creates that feedback loop where the guitar just whines. That is the Santana sound. And while he's doing this, he makes that face. He closes his eyes tight, bites his lip. Sometimes he's crying a bit. He grimaces like he's passing a kidney stone. He wants you to think he is feeling the music so hard that it hurts. And he wants you to think those notes are coming from the heavens. But no, he's really just playing the minor pentatonic. It is the first scale you learn when you take guitar lesson. He never learned a second scale. And by the 1980s, Santana was fading away. His albums were flopping. The spiritual jazz fusion thing wasn't selling records. He was starting to become the dreaded nostalgia act, the dude you saw at a state fair. But then in 1999, he committed the ultimate crime. He decided to sell out completely. So he released the album Supernatural. Brought in a bunch of pop stars who were half his age. Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20. Guys from Wyclef Jean. He became a backup musician on his own album. And the song Smooth was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. It was on the radio every 5 minutes. Man, it's a hot one. And there was Carlos, standing there in the background, wearing the fedora, making his constipated face, playing the same fill he played in 1970. He won 9 Grammys for that album. It was a faceplant. It proved that you don't have to write good songs. You just have to find a young singer and play high-pitched noodling over the top of it. He talks a lot about how music is a message of love and light, but his career is a message of branding. He turned his guitar into a logo. He plays 5 notes, sustains the last one for a minute, and collects the royalty check. All those faces and emotion, and really, we just know that he's bending the G-string. But Keith Richards, he's a medical miracle. He should have died in 1973. Then he should have died in 1978. He definitely should have died in the 80s, but he is still here. He looks like a leather purse that was left in a tanning bed for 30 years, and he has convinced the world that playing sloppy is cool. The Rolling Stones are called the greatest rock and roll band in the world, but they're actually the loosest band in the world. Keith Richards does not play chords. He plays suggestions of chords. He uses a tuning called open G, takes the bottom string off the guitar. He has only 5 strings. Why? Because 6 strings are just too much work. He lays his finger across the neck and hits the strings. And that's the riff for Brown Sugar. It's also the riff for Start Me Up. It's also the riff for Honky Tonk Women. It's the same riff, just changes the speed and the key a little bit. In the 1980s, the Stones were a disaster. Keith and Mick hated each other. They called it World War III. Mick wanted to be a pop star. Keith just wanted to stay up all night and drink vodka. And they released an album in '86 called Dirty Work, and it turned out to be really bad. The band sounded like they were falling down the stairs. Keith's solo on that record are barely musical. Bends the notes out of tune, misses beats, hits the wrong strings. But because he is Keith Richards, people say it has swagger. It has feel. No, it has arthritis. He hides behind the image of the outlaw, wears the bandana, has the skull ring, acts like he doesn't care, and that's the problem. He really doesn't care. He stopped practicing in 1968. In 1989, they did the Steel Wheels Tour. People called it the Steel Wheelchair Tour. They were building massive stages to distract from the fact that the music was really tired. Keith would come out, hit a big open chord, pose for the camera, and then wander around the stage for 5 minutes. He has a real tragic relationship with the guitar solo. When it is time for him to play a lead, he looks confused. Plays a few Chuck Berry licks that sound thin and scratchy. He relies on Ronnie Wood to do the heavy lifting. Keith is a rhythm player who thinks he is a lead player. He is famous for being famous, and he's also famous for doing drugs and surviving. But the music, it's dusty, repetitive. It's basically a zombie with a Telecaster. Somebody needs to tell him the war is over. You can put the guitar down now, Keith. Finally, we have the most protected guitarist of all time. We have the man that they call God, Eric Clapton. In the 1960s, somebody graffitied "Clapton is God" on a wall in London. That person was clearly deaf, or possibly they just hadn't heard Jimi Hendrix yet. Clapton is the definition of boring. They call him slow hand. Do you know why? Because he plays slow, and his brain works slow. In the 1960s with Cream, he was okay. He had some fire. He played loud. But then the 70s happened, and Eric Clapton decided he wanted to be a soft rock singer. He traded a Les Paul for a Stratocaster because it sounded thinner. He started wearing suits, started singing songs about Sally and Layla, but not the rock version of Layla, the acoustic sleepy version. And by the 80s, it was a pure polished turd. He released albums produced by Phil Collins. It was synthesizers and drum machine. He wore Armani jackets with the sleeves rolled up. He looked like a stockbroker on a casual Friday. In 1986, he releases a song called "It's in the Way That You Use It," the soundtrack to the movie The Color of Money. And that's exactly what it sounds like. Money. But not the dangerous kind. The corporate kind. You got a synthesizer riff pretty much running the song. Not a guitar. A cheap plastic keyboard. He buried his own instrument under layers of Hollywood production. He's singing in the chorus, but he sounds like he's reading a contract. It's too polished. Too radio friendly. It's the musical equivalent of a beige office hallway. No pain in his voice, no struggle. He's just checking that box so he could get back to his country estate. And to prove that he wasn't interested in the blues anymore, he was interested in the soundtrack business. And then came the 90s. Clapton found the ultimate way to be boring. MTV Unplugged. 1992. Sat on a chair, played that acoustic guitar. He took his furious rock anthem, Layla, and turned it into a jazz shuffle. Took out the famous riff. Took out the high screaming solo. Turned it into a song that you could play at a funeral. And the world loved it. It sold millions. It won the Grammys. And it validated his decision to stop trying. He realized that he did not need to be a guitar hero. He just needed to be a celebrity. He even did a commercial for Michelob beer. He licensed his song After Midnight to sell weak American lager. And that's what a guitar god does. That is what a sellout does. Clapton is the king of the middle of the road. Never takes risks. Never plays a note that might offend somebody. He sings about cocaine but makes it sound like a cup of Earl Grey tea. He took the blues, which is supposed to be about pain and suffering, and cleaned it up for the suburbs. Sanitized it. Made it safe for people who like to drive Volvos. Eric Clapton proved that if you play quietly and dress nicely, people will forget that you haven't played an interesting lick in 20 years. Like, subscribe. Thank you.